I guess we are live now. Good day again, everybody. I would like to greet you on behalf of Property Georgia and FIABCI-Georgia. I'm thrilled to welcome all of you, keynote speakers, and our participants, distinguished international and local guests. Welcome on today's roundtable. My name is Lika Kardava. I'm founder and managing partner of Property Georgia, which is first property hub and real estate guide in our country. Property Georgia was founded in 2016 year with a mission to be the first and main guide on Georgia's real estate market for international investors and also gate to international markets for local developers. With the goal to put Georgia on the global real estate map, in 2019, we initiated and founded the local chapter of Real Estate Federation, FIABCI, the leading business networking organization for all real estate professionals worldwide. And so we're so proud that we are part of this global family. On behalf of Property Georgia, we have organized a couple of international forums in 2019. One of them was building sustainable and resilient cities, also energy efficiency buildings. And these forums were covering sustainable urban development, real estate, hospitality sectors, most topical aspects. And most important thing is that this event hosted keynote speakers and delegates from 15 countries and was supported from FIABCI, International Real Estate Federation. Also, our main supporter was local leading commercial bank, Bank of Georgia. Also, we were supported by international financial institutions, international urbanists, international local international and local chambers of commerce, local private companies, businesses, and governmental authorities. So all stakeholders who are related to real estate and construction sectors. So today, during our online roundtable, our speakers, you will share latest investment trends taking place in emerging markets. We will learn from global real estate leaders what types of assets are interesting for investors planning to invest in emerging markets, and also how have emerging markets adapted to new normal. How has the focus of investors changed after COVID-19 pandemics, and which emerging markets are becoming new targets for investors? With our Georgian speakers, we'll discuss why to invest in Georgia and how competitive is the country in this region, and what kind of opportunities has the crisis created for property market in the country, and what should a country do to attract investors, and your advices and recommendations will be more than respected. Our speakers from Enterprise Georgia speaker and also speaker from leading development company Alliance Group will cover in more depth investment climate aspects and real estate investment opportunities. Hereby, I would like to mention that Georgia's real estate sector has developed rapidly during the last few years, and this on its part has reflected in attracting more and more foreign investors, both individual, mid-scale, and large-scale investors as well. To introduce very shortly, Georgia offers considerable potential to develop beach resources, medical and wellness destinations, winter ski resorts, and four-season destinations. And for companies looking to find a place with great access, talented people, cost competitiveness, ease of doing business, and also attractive returns and lucrative properties. All this may be found in Georgia. So now I would like to briefly introduce our speakers and give floor then to Kate. Luckily, we have impressive and great lineup. So we have on board Davit Tavlalashvili, Deputy Head of investment departments. It's Enterprise Georgia, from Enterprise Georgia, investment promotion agency of Georgia, and the brand of Invest in Georgia. We'll have as a speaker Temur Bitsadze, that is Chief Business Development Officer at Alliance Group, leading construction and development company of Georgia. Also, we have Joerg Baehren, Managing Director at Edira Capital, International Fund and Investment Management Company. Mr. Mauro Keller Sarmiento, Executive Managing Director of NAI Global International Business. Margaret and Andreeva, unfortunately, we planned to host Margaret, but due to COVID, unfortunately, she's not participating, and let's wish her to become healthy and safe as soon as possible. And we have Suchit, Punnose, CEO and founder of Red Ribbon Asset Management. So thank you again to our speakers for their participation, their time, and their expertise that will be shared very soon to our audience. Wishing fruitful exchange, and thank you again for your interest. And now let me give floor to my business partner, Tabatadze, and then we will ask questions to our speakers, and they will have opportunity to ask one question to each other. So I'm sure this today's gathering will be very interesting.
Thank you, Lika. Thank you for a wonderful introduction of the webinar. I'd like to add a few words about Georgia. First of all, greetings from Tbilisi, Georgia, everyone. Well, Georgia, the country where we live, Lika and I, and our speakers from Georgia, is a very interesting emerging destination for foreign investors. Though being a small country, Georgia offers lots of opportunities when it comes to real estate and tourism. This is a country with a 3.7 million population, which is quite small, but annually, this small country welcomes, well, we can say it used to welcome over 9 million international visitors. We hope that this trend will go up again when we all together, well, the whole world will defeat these pandemics, which has very negative impact on all sectors, not only real estate, but all sectors all around the world. Large-scale new development projects in Georgia, especially those which integrate international brands, have showed more or less resilience towards these pandemics. We can say that, moreover, even some big developers started new projects. On this topic, we will hear more from our speaker, Mr. Temur Bitsadze, who represents Alliance Group, one of the biggest construction development companies in Georgia. Thanks to the quality properties that are being built in the country for the, let's say, last decade, I would say that Georgia is becoming more and more interesting for foreign investors. And their scale has been broadening from neighboring countries and so post-Soviet Union countries to Middle East, Europe, Asia, and even the United States. Well, seeing this trend, we at Property Georgia set a target to become a guide for international investors, people who are interested in our country's property market. With this in mind, as Lika already mentioned, we launched, it was our initiative that FIABCI-Georgia was launched. And what's very important, it's in near future, on behalf of FIABCI-Georgia, we plan to announce the very first National Grid Excellence Awards of the projects. And this, I think, will be a good opportunity for Georgian projects to restart their international exposure, and as the winners will be afterwards nominated on the international level. all that may sound good, but to make an investment decision in a new market, in a new country, what matters first is the country's business, climate, environment, safety, and stability. Today we have Mr. Davit Tavlalashvili, Deputy Head of Investments at Invest in Georgia, and he will tell us more about Georgia's story. Mr. Tavlalashvili has worked at Invest in Georgia for over 5 years. He's leading the efforts of attracting investments in various sectors, including hospitality and real estate. Now I'd like to give floor to David. David, hello.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Lika, for organizing this beautiful event, and welcome everybody. And thank you for your interest in Georgia. I will use this opportunity to share my screen to present a brief presentation about why we think Georgia is a good destination for investments. And I will briefly start with an overview of what we offer. So Georgia has a very strategic location. It has very business-friendly environment and very pro-business tax system. And also Georgia offers very competitive and skilled labor force. And also we have great access to different international markets. I won't go into many details about real estate because I know for other presenters will be discussing it in more details, but I will just concentrate on general business environments. And you can see major figures on this slide, and one figure that I want to mention and highlight is share of reinvestments in total FDI number. And over the last 5 years, this average number stands at 44%, which in on itself is very impressive number based on international standards. But I want to mention that last year during pandemic, this number was 90%, meaning that even though new investments were limited due to obvious reasons, the confidence of existing investors was very high. And this gives us a confidence that we will rebound very strongly. Now I want to mention several rankings that Georgia has. You can see that Georgia is number 8 globally in terms of least restrictiveness for investors. And this ranking looks at things like, is it easy to open business for foreigners? Is it easy to own a property in Georgia, and so on and so on. And as I mentioned, Georgia is one of the most open countries for investors. Georgia actually ranks number 1 in terms of least interaction needed with the government. This is a very important point, and it shows how easy is it to do business here, and how low bureaucracy we have. Georgia also ranks 12th in Index of Economic Freedom. And also, I want to highlight that this business environment that we have right now is kind of guaranteed going forward because we have association agreement with the European Union, which obliges Georgia to only improve our business environment and our legal system as well. Now I want to demonstrate why Georgia ranks number 7th in ease of doing business, because one thing is ranking and another thing is reality. And you can see here that you can start business in 1 day, you can register property in 1 day, you can get construction permit in around 2 months, and so on and so on. And you can see that this is much quicker and much faster than in most of highly developed countries, giving an edge to Georgia in this regard. Now I want to also mention the connectivity aspect that Georgia offers. We have a free trade agreement with many countries and visa-free regime with 97 countries, meaning that not only goods can move freely between Georgia and our partner countries, but also tourists as well. Also, a very important point for investors is labor force, of course, and it's very important to have competitive labor force in today's market. And as you can see, Georgia offers very competitively priced labor in not only services but also production. And it's also important to note that Georgia ranks 22nd in terms of index of labor freedom, meaning, and this is because most of the aspects of the employment contract can be negotiable, meaning employee and employer can negotiate on terms that is acceptable for both parties. For a country as small as Georgia, the number of higher education institutes and vocational education centers is quite impressive. We have 64 higher education institutes and 66 vet schools, and this means that over last 5 years, more than 120,000 students have graduated from different fields of bachelor's and master's programs. And this provides a very good base for any business to find a qualified and motivated workforce. Not only labor force is competitive, but also operational costs in general. You can see that Georgia industrial water prices are one of the lowest in Europe, actually. And another good thing is that most of electricity in Georgia is generated through hydropower and wind power, meaning that companies who have strict rules to comply with emission reduction and so on, they can easily comply with those regulations in Georgia. I would also like to mention that industrial property is developing quite fast in Georgia. And actually, we have 3 industrial zones where you can rent property and then develop real estate, which is not, as you can see by the prices provided here, not really expensive. And now I would like to mention a few words about taxation system. As you can see, Georgia ranks number 3 in terms of least tax burdened countries in the world, which means that companies have very low burden in terms of taxes. And this is because of our meticulous efforts and long-term reforms, which resulted in very reduced number of taxes. As you can see, the corporate profit tax can be 0 or 15. This is because only distributed profit will be taxed, meaning that retained profit, reinvested or otherwise kept in company, will not be taxed. Personal income tax is 20%, and also we have pension contribution 2%, and these are only 2 taxes paid based on employee salary. VAT is 18%. Property tax is maximum 1%. This is actually a local tax, meaning that based on each municipality, it might differ, but it cannot go above 1%. And also we have import tax in most of the products, about 80% or even more, are taxed by 0%, and in some cases it's 5 or 12. And also we have double taxation avoidance treaties with 56 countries, which gives additional incentive for investors to invest here. I briefly mentioned special economic zones and the free industrial zones. There are 4 zones, so anybody interested in industrial property, they can take a look at free industrial zones in Georgia. They provide tax exemptions for companies producing and exporting to other countries. And also there is special support for real estate programs, projects. Government can provide land for a symbolic price if the investment obligation in the project is viable. And also we have co-financing of interest payment loans, co-financing of hotel management franchise fees, and also collateral co-financing for the projects in hospitality and real estate. So, and last but not least, I would like to mention a few words about our agency. We are part of a bigger organization called Enterprise Georgia, which has 3 directions. It's business development, export support, and of course, Invest in Georgia brand, which I represent. And we provide facilitation services for potential investors and aftercare services for existing investors. So if you have any questions regarding investment potential of Georgia or in general about Georgia, please contact us and we'll be more than happy to help you. So thank you very much. This was my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you really for a wonderful presentation. As you mentioned in the beginning, investors' confidence is pretty high towards Georgia. Why could this be so high? What are the main factors? Maybe we could single out some points that you have from your personal experience with investors, their feedback, why Georgia could be an interesting market for investments, especially in property market maybe, during such times which the whole world call crisis.
So thank you, Kate, for a great question. Some of the reasons why it's good to invest here, I already mentioned, and with your permission, I'm gonna concentrate on why we have confidence that this is gonna be the same going forward. Because one thing is having good situation right now, but it could change, right? But actually, we are confident that it can only improve if it's gonna change. Because as I mentioned, we have association agreement with the European Union, and maybe some of you have already heard that we made a public announcement that in 2024 we are going to actually apply officially to become members of EU, and these kind of statements and this kind of direction brings in on itself like obligation, not only legally but also morally. I would say that we are going to become full-fledged EU members at some point in the future, and our legislation will be very streamlined in line with the EU regulations, and it will be fair and transparent, which is most important. Also, there is provision in our constitution saying that taxes cannot increase without public consent, and this is it means that without referendum, government cannot increase taxes. So this is very important point for companies who are investing here, that they will have same or only better playing rules going forward. And this kind of small things, or maybe it's not even small things, gives confidence to companies who are already here or who might be looking at Georgia, that this is a great country for investments.
Thank you, David. I think if any participants have any questions, they can ask during today's webinar, or even afterwards. You can leave your questions and we will try to connect you then. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for a very informative and interesting presentation, giving facts about Georgia and main insight that will be helpful for international investors. And now let me introduce again our next speaker, Joerg Baehren. He's Managing Director of edira Capital, as I mentioned, which is an international fund and investment management company. Mr. Baehren has 35 years of experience in the construction industry, international business consultancy, and investment and fund management. He's Director of Projects and Investments at Revise. Joerg previously worked for major fund managers with 10 billion euro assets under management and more than 55,000 investors. He managed more than 160 funds property and project companies. Dear Joerg, it's quite interesting that you have so rich experience and background in real estate and construction sector, and it will be very useful to hear your insights about the latest trends. So as we know, it's quite interesting that the significant impact has the pandemic on real estate, and it has encouraged many investors and developers and other parties that are engaged in this sector to reimagine what real estate will need to offer in the future. It will be pretty interesting for our audience to hear what types of assets are interesting for investors planning to invest in emerging markets today and in medium term and long term from today's perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Lika. Thank you very much for this introduction. Yeah, so this is a pretty tough question because we're in different times right now, and a lot changed during that time. Of course, you cannot give a general answer on what investor wants to invest in what country. There is let's say, a lot of work to do before just to find out what the country can offer even, yeah. There are just different types also of investors, yeah. Do I go for a long-term investment, or do I only go for a short-term investment? Usually emerging market. And after this presentation from Davit, I'm struggling a little bit to call Georgia emerging market because these numbers are so amazing. Just to, let's say, point out number 7 in doing business, Germany is number 22. Yeah, so this means you're much more advanced than we are. So that's why really congratulations for that. Yeah, so but this let's say are all points for investors in what kind of let's say real estate investment they want to go. There are countries, I can give you an example. Let's say my most, let's say, well example is China. China is a typical, let's say, residential market for investors as an emerging market, yeah, because it's a buyer's market. Everybody wants to have his own apartment. So if you go into a real estate investment, there's nothing really wrong what you can do, yeah. So it's a, let's say, short-term investment, and you go out definitely after 1.5 or maybe 2 years, get your profit, which is quite attractive still, and you go out. If you're an investor, yeah, who wants to go for a long-term, they probably will not go into emerging market because it's not so stable. Usually these long-term investors, they go only in, or probably more into stable markets, yeah, because they want to set their money for minimum 5, maybe even 10 years, just to want to have their income as a yielding income, yeah. If it's office or if it's residential, it varies from country to country. For example, Germany is well known for residential investment, long-term investments, even for foreign investors. And other countries are more maybe for, let's say, for offices. Yeah. So this is a really, you cannot give a typical answer for that nowadays. It is more to very special real estate investments. For example, logistic is booming. Yeah, even let's say kind of mushrooming in some countries, yeah. So, and light industrial, which is called, yeah. And as Germany was, for example, as a stable market, Germany was well known for office investments, now completely turned into residential long-term investments. So, but this market is gone already, so there is nothing on the market anymore. So this is why a country should, let's say, find its position completely, or let's say how to attract investors. We come to this question, I think, also later, how to attract investors with what kind of real estate asset, yeah, you really can do. So I think it was probably 1 year ago I even mentioned, so you're quite a small country, a very beautiful country. Yeah, of course you can offer a lot, but well, you have not that much space also for urbanization, and I'm not sure if you're interested in a real urbanization process like other countries like India or China. Yeah, there's really a lot of population. So that's why it's quite challenging for a country, Georgia, to attract big investors, yeah, to come in for, I don't know, big office buildings for investments, or big residential areas. Yeah, so a country should find, I think you're probably more for this, I said also last time, more for hospitality, yeah. definitely. And other countries, so they can, let's say, go away with hospitality completely. So they change maybe into office. So it is a challenging time at the moment, definitely. Yeah. Also to, let's say, how to really to attract investors with what kind of properties, yeah, how they should invest in. So that's why, well, it's I think we will see this year, maybe next year, how the world will going on and continue, let's say, in regarding kind of, let's say, property investments in emerging markets. Yeah, so that's why it's quite tricky, this question.
I absolutely agree, and thank you for giving your global insights and the perspectives that from country to country approaches of investments vary and depends on the country's development level and also COVID situation. Also, it's important that dominance of asset classes also varies from country to country, but as you mentioned, we see that globally logistics takes huge dominance in the market, as well as residential real estate. The same happens in Georgia in terms of residential properties. So thank you for your answer, interesting answer. Now I will give a floor to Kate to introduce our next speaker. Thank you, Joerg.
Well, thank you, Joerg, for interesting insights from global perspective. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Temur Bitsadze. He is the Chief Business Development Officer at Alliance Group. Temur leads the department of the largest development company in Georgia, which actually is responsible for the expansion of sales channels in potential countries. In order to attract investments from different countries, he has been establishing the right communications and making the accurate studies to set up the effective representative offices. He is also involved in bringing the international brands such as Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, Wyndham, and last but not least, World Trade Center to Georgia. So hereby, I'd like to ask Temur a question about the current situation and how, Temur, how do you see what are the opportunities that we as a country can benefit from this crisis? Tell us your point of view from your perspective. How can we turn this crisis into opportunity?
Thank you, Kate, for the introduction. Let me start with the first part of the question to assess the current situation, to be honest. In 2020, it was extremely challenging for everyone, but especially for us in Georgia and for the many other countries, it was especially very challenging for in terms of the hospitality industry and the real estate sector. Because there were some lockdown which caused some negative effects on basically the consumer confidence, and also the expectations and feelings were not that high, so that people were eager to invest. Also, the country borders were closed, so there were mostly were not having any kind of tourism except for the local tourism. So the main target for the country itself was to distribute the amount of the spent amount that was that has been spending by the Georgians in foreign countries, to distribute this amount and to be spent within the market, and they managed quite positively, to be honest. In mainly some of the regions. Like winery region, which is Kakheti, and also the seaside resort, which is Batumi, they received a lot of tourists, a lot of local tourists during these pandemic times. And they were basically dependent on the local investors, and we are actually not having that much local investors because in the real estate sector, mostly people are buying flats for living. So Alliance Group, the company I represent, who is basically selling the investment real estate, for us, it was obviously quite difficult. However, during this 2020 and 2021, the government strongly supported all the sectors. They were subsidizing the mortgage loans. They were restructuring all the business loans as well. For instance, what is very, very important, this is the infrastructure projects that has not stopped at all, because the government has also provided some insurance for the material price changes, not to be afraid of the price increase and not to stop the projects. Also, some hospitality sector players, such as cafes, restaurants, and hotels, have been exempted from paying rents, and some businesses have also been paying the reduced taxes. There were some agricultural incentives, as well as government grants, and also some social encouraging and supporting activities. So the government did their best, to be honest, in order to keep the business flow going without stopping. Despite this situation, which is not actually quite rare in terms of the pandemic, we did not suffer that much, to be honest, because a pandemic showed us that we have to concentrate on something more. We had to concentrate on the countries which suffered the least, for instance. Mr. Joerg actually mentioned that for instance, for the long-term investments, people are basically trying to invest, and investors are trying to invest in the countries such as developed countries such as Germany, for instance, because they are mostly looking for the stable income, which is more reliable for them. But bearing in mind that the tourism was growing in Georgia for like 10 to 15% on an annual basis, and the residential and the developments of the main real estate developments were not catching the demand. The prices were always going high, and in the short term, the investors have been gaining a really good yields, but even for the long term, even if you look at the long term perspective, and if you look at the Georgian market as a residential, residential market real estate opportunity, the prices in Georgia are quite low at the moment, and if you look at the Eastern European countries, average price, you will clearly see that it is at least 50% or 100% higher than we have in Georgia. So if you will look back at the history of Georgian real estate price index, you will clearly see that these prices are growing on an annual basis. So if you look at the appreciation of the prices, as well as the hospitality that is increasing on a yearly basis as well, used to increase at least, and we have very positive feeling and very positive expectations that we will go back. We'll go back to that stage when it was like that. You can consider that the real estate business for Georgia and the real estate investments is quite beneficial, and if we all take all this information all together and think of when is the best time for potential investors to make investments, we all know that probably some other financial instruments are not that stable as the real estate. And if you also think of the current situation that we have all in the world, but we see clearly the positive changes and the economic growth as well, we can consider that now is the right time to invest, because now the economy starts to open and the economy starts to grow. And in addition to that, the companies are always providing some extremely beneficial payment terms. The banks are encouraging local as well as the foreign investors with lower interest rates in Georgia, and also the government is also subsidizing and co-financing the mortgage loans. And what I've actually mentioned, Georgia's real estate has shown impressive growth during the past years. So when the pandemic is over, and we hope we're getting to this stage, it is forecasted that in the next 5 to 10 years, the prices of apartments in Georgia will definitely go up. So this is the potential, and I see that this is the right moment for foreign investors to just take their savings and invest effectively in emerging countries. And I still repeat that we are still emerging countries, and we have really prosperous, but really we need to make some changes to the sector and the industry and the economy as a whole. So we're still emerging market, and there's still good opportunities to invest in Georgia.
Thank you, Temur. Yes, of course, every incentive is very crucial for the economy. As you said, government has initiated some incentives for property sector. We all agree that this cannot last forever. So the main goal is to defeat this crisis, the pandemics, first of all. And what we really have to tell investors is that Georgia truly has good history of its successful property market for the last years. And the factor that you mentioned about the pricing, it's also very important to highlight that prices in Georgia are less than Eastern Europe, but they are rising and rising every year. So it's also a very good point. And what's also worthwhile to mention is that in the past, the world has faced other pandemics as well, but this has not made a devastating effect on real estate. So let's hope that pretty soon, when the world gets vaccinated, we will get back on track, and Georgia will go on to its successful development in real estate and the economy itself. Thank you.
We'll hope so.
Temur, thank you so much for giving very interesting outlook about our local market, Georgia, and highlighting latest trends. We hope we're positive that soon we will rebound our country, and other countries in the world, and medicine will win, and we will go to a new normal with lots of strategies. So it's now time to represent to you our next speaker, Mr. Mauro Keller Sarmiento. We would like to thank him for his participation. I'm sure he will share very interesting insights with us regarding Mauro Keller's experience. He is Executive Managing Director of NAI Global International Business. He's responsible for all international businesses and coordinates NAI global platforms in Latin America, Asia, and Europe. He's focused on working with NAI's local professionals to win business and develop businesses from clients with global needs. So he's responsible to not only grow business from member to member and from region to region, but also he's driving the development of this strategy, which will grow out global footprint and capabilities. Mr. Mauro Keller Sarmiento is available to assist members to grow, share best practices, and more fully and efficiently integrate into the NAI system. His career includes working with JP Morgan, McKinsey, and Goldman Sachs throughout multiple markets. Thank you again, Mr. Mauro, for joining us. I think you're unmuted.
Am I unmuted now? Yeah, okay.
We hear you.
Okay.
Mr. Mauro, thank you so much for participation. It will be pretty interesting to hear from your side insights. As we see, COVID has a great impact on real estate industry. At the same time, we all know, work in real estate in this sector, that real estate was and will be attractive sector always, and investors are looking for stable returns, and they prefer to invest in real estate as they have asset that is tangible, that has appreciation potential over years, and that this trend grows. It will be pretty interesting to know what trends are taking place and how has the focus of investors changed after COVID pandemics. As we see, there is some trend that capital grows from Asia to Europe, and it will be interesting to learn which European countries are investors' focus to discuss all these aspects from your global perspective.
Thank you, Lika and Kate, for inviting me to this interesting webinar, and thank you to the speakers that preceded me. I think it's very interesting what you're doing from Georgia Property, and also what the initiatives that you have. Like Joerg said, being an emerging market in the geographic location that you are in is a challenge, and I think you're doing very well in terms of how to approach it and to get discussions and opinions and so forth. So that's very, very appreciated. And I think a little bit like Joerg said, from our perspective, NEI Global is an international advisory and brokerage firm. Our headquarters are in New York, and most of our members are in the United States, but we are present in about 40 countries, approximately 20 in Europe, some also in Eastern Europe. I think that, like you were saying, Lika, this is a very special situation today. I think this year, as we slowly come out of COVID, or at least the lockdowns that we had last year, each market and each investment capital group is sort of looking what to do. So there's still a lot of caution, I would say, overall, but definitely you have to get your story out. You have to get your products, your projects, and your incentives. From the perspective of the work that we do, there's appetite for all sorts of different investments, depending on the profile, like Joerg was saying, in terms of timing, in terms of risk, in terms of etc. There's a lot of things that come into the mix. One thing I did not hear, or I'm not very aware of, which is a concern for many investors, is the exchange rate situation. And sort of what does it mean if I have to invest in this local currency? And what does it mean in terms of then having returns and understanding what is the variability of potential returns going forward? I definitely think that your strategy of trying to work, especially in countries that can understand you, neighboring countries, you look at your tourism, where it comes from, what it does, et cetera, that is also very helpful. And there's a lot of international groups that are constantly looking for opportunities to invest money, higher risk, higher return, obviously. So in the emerging markets, and I'm talking to you guys from Buenos Aires, Argentina. So in this part of the world, there's tons of emerging markets that are struggling with the same issues that you are struggling. And each one has their own sort of perspective. I think we will hear from Suchit in India, and he will certainly add his point in terms of, there's a big varied world out there in terms of investors. That's a little bit the framework that I would like to sort of leave you guys with. Obviously, I'm more than happy to think and work together and discuss how we from NEI Global can help you guys at the end of the day, we're a group of close to 7,000 professionals in the real estate industry, are more in an advisory role than in a capital investment role, although we do that in the United States, but we can certainly sort of move forward together on this.
Dear Mauro, thank you so much for your interesting discussion. As you mentioned, we all live in special situation, and many things are still unclear for investors, and the market is changing rapidly, and we understand that investors are observing and they are not hurrying up to make decisions. But the main thing is, as you mentioned, that they have appetite to invest in various class assets, and even there is a group of investors who are ready to invest in emerging markets with high risk assets and expect high returns from this. And fully agree that companies, like local companies, need to work consistently and reach out to target audiences and tell their stories, they share their projects, because this period is a good period for information exchange, and maybe as soon as we all will be back to normal and situation will be rebounded. So countries like Georgia and other emerging destinations will attract new types of investors from various countries. Thank you again for sharing interesting insights, and I'm sure that our participants, like local companies, international companies, will have some interest to do business with NAI. I learned about your company the first time when I was visiting Ukraine Real Estate Club's events, and this was my first touch with your company representation. So thank you again. And now I will give floor to Kate to represent our next speaker. Kate.
Thank you, Lika. Thank you, Mauro. I think and I hope that you have now more information about Georgia than you had before, and we will try to give you even more information afterwards, and I hope that we can somehow get more interested in our country, and someday, and which will be pretty soon, we can welcome you here in Georgia as well. So now I'm gonna present our last speaker, Mr. Suchit Punnose, the CEO and founder of Red Ribbon Asset Management. Mr. Suchit has 20 years of experience in investments, real estate, and venture across India and UK. He is the founder of Red Ribbon Fund Management Limited and Red Ribbon Asset Management. Mr. Suchit has strong and established commercial network in India. So, Mr. Suchit, hello again. So I'd like to ask you one simple question, actually, the answer to which may not be that simple. What should a country do to attract investors? And I would add during these hard times.
Great. Well, thank you. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm sure Lika and Kate has put in countless hours of effort to put a call here together. So delighted to be it, and also sharing the forum with Mauro and other distinguished leaders in this sector. So I think firstly, I want to start by saying, after again having listened to David's presentation on the country, there isn't much I can say about a question you just posed to me. I think the establishment and system of the country has done very well, and as Joerg said earlier, I don't know whether you can call this an emerging market. Perhaps you need to change the nomenclature to a growth market. So you start as a fringe, then frontier, emerging, and then perhaps into growth, although growth requires probably slightly larger GDPs. So I like to start with putting a context into COVID-19. We've all become experts on this, haven't we, to comment on what the pandemic has done and what it is going to do. I think the reality is that we as mankind, I think we have the indomitable spirit to go through such challenges. The last one was the Spanish flu in 1900s. This time, at least, we are hoping we've got far more advanced medical technology to sort out. Essentially, it's an existential threat. Now, that, and I'm afraid I know a few people close to that have succumbed to this. There's quite a few people dying even today. We all must obviously be grateful that we've survived. And hopefully the vaccination comes through, and this time next year, we also, as mankind, we have short-term memory too. So hopefully this time next year, we've completely forgotten about the pandemic and it's business as usual. Now, having said that, I think in the context of what the pandemic has highlighted to us, and it is for any market, is real estate 2.0. And what does real estate 2.0 entail? Now, the UK media and medias across the world did highlight to us of the fact when 4.5 or 5 billion of the 6.5 billion of us stayed at home, it gave the environment a huge breather. And this brings us on to the topic of about how, and it's very relevant to an fast emerging market such as Georgia as well, especially when you're about to go into construction. It is the painful, terrible hole around carbon and all of the carbon footprint that's generated from the construction and the development activity. So if anything, COVID-19 has shown us that there is a curve to be flattened, and that's the environmental curve. And if we are to now follow through that curve and how to flatten it, it brings out a myriad of opportunities for a nation such as Georgia and all external stakeholders such as ourselves looking at an emerging market such as Georgia. So carbon neutrality, in my view, has got to become a standard. We must be able to, and I think fundamentally at the holding company level, which we run, any investment we make has got to be a mainstream impact investment, qualifying investment. What that means is that we invest in projects that deliver measurable environmental and social impact whilst giving an above market rate return. And the real estate sector has got a huge role to play in looking at where the carbon footprint stands, what the impact of the environment is, and also the greenhouse gas effects. All of that is causing an existential threat that we've always had it. I mean, we're talking about the pandemic, but maybe that's a correctional force that nature has chucked at us. So therefore, if you were to then say that COVID-19 has had a highlighter on the environmental aspects of real estate industry, the other element is about user or consumer behavior. We know that the world has shrunk even more into more digital, more contactless. So how does that impact the design elements of the real estate that we want to build? That also then brings us on to the topic of what is emerging technologies. So you have a great opportunity, and especially when I do a quick comparison with India, with 1.4 billion people, it's a very large tanker that takes forever to turn. You are much more nimble as an economy with 4 million people. You could very quickly aspire and deliver a program which is policy driven and in conjunction with the private sector to turn around and make your real estate sector to be the world's first carbon neutral real estate sector, for example. That's possible as a badge for the size and the nimbleness that your economy provides. So emerging tech such as blockchain for quality assurance, AI-driven design efficiencies, and also IoT-enabled smart buildings, which can actively measure and deliver what the carbon footprint is of an individual's interaction with the real estate. That's, I think, what real estate 2.0 is. And we as a firm, when we look at any asset class within real estate, that could be, as Joerg said, logistics, which is now the new kid in the block or the poster boy. You've got student accommodation, care homes, affordable housing. All of those have a one-off carbon footprint, and it also has ongoing carbon footprint. How do we mitigate that, and how do we offset that to neutralize it must be at the forefront of all of us as stakeholders in real estate, because real estate is one of the highest contributors to carbon footprint. So in my view, I see positives in the hinterland and the catchment area that you have as an economy, and the feeding from the port into Georgia, and for Georgia to also step in and look at becoming a center for design excellence. So when you have smaller economies, you could be then giving that high quality value addition in the process, which could be in the design elements or in specific input materials that go into the construction industry. So if we are to then say that we should push real estate 2.0 as the agenda, and that should be a local agenda, and I feel that should be a global agenda, then it's also important that we look at turning construction into manufacturing. So it's important that we do actively, as stakeholders in this sector, adopt any material that will reduce the carbon footprint, anything that can create a source of renewable energy, anything that would reduce the ongoing carbon footprint is what is required and the need of the hour. So to the construction contractors, if there are any in the call, there's definitely the need to look at prefabricated offsite construction. So that could be 3D volumetric light gauge or light gauge steel framing and so on. If you are in the architects, consultants, and engineering sector, you need to be looking at how you would adopt the emerging technologies that comes through. And of course, when it comes to policy making, it does help if you're able to come up with maybe certain certifications, such as say a LEED Zero building gets a 10-year tax break maybe. That would definitely attract the green investors who are actively chasing green assets in the real estate. We understand, especially considering the fact that we invest in India, attracting investments into an emerging market, it is competitive, it is a challenge. But there are specific, in any market, this is niche investors that would look for those opportunities. And as Mauro was saying, it's a risk-reward balance. And that's where the focus needs to be. So to sum it all up, I think it's absolutely critical that we come out of this pandemic with a very definitive view that if we don't have a policy to measure and mitigate the negative consequences on the environment caused by our business activity, whilst of course adding value to the society, no doubt, but if we don't have a policy to identify and mitigate the negative consequences on the environment, then we have a much bigger problem. So I'll close by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Suchit, and especially thank you for bringing up this very important topic, which is about carbon. Yes, we must build. We cannot say you should not build anything, but we must build responsibly. And actually in Georgia, we are taking first steps in this direction. I mean, energy efficiency. We do not have certifications yet, but we are on the way, and we are moving forward toward this. Actually, before pandemics, Property Georgia, as Lika already mentioned in the beginning, organized two big international events. One was energy efficiency in building, and the other one building sustainable and resilient cities. So next time this year, as you say, we will all have defeated this pandemic. We will have another big event, I hope so, and maybe we can all get together there. Thank you. And now if panelists have questions with each other, you are free to ask questions in the final part. Thank you.
I would like to ask Davit something, because your presentation really was very impressive about numbers. Let's say how you, the economy is done and everything. So everything works together for me. And how you go out and let's say you should maybe go out more aggressively to the world, because I see already some jaws are dropping from investors if they know in what kind of rankings you are also, let's say, on top. So I just found one ranking as well, which is the criminal index, which ranks Georgia on place number 4, means this is the safest place in Europe. Yeah. And you have to look for that if you, let's say, for example, prepare for, let's say, discussions like that. But you should go out a little bit more aggressive that, let's say, you get more on the papers on the desk of investors. So what is your, let's say, government also doing, let's say, to present your country as positive as it is really? Yeah.
Thank you for a great question. Currently, we also see that we are doing quite well in terms of legislation and rankings, of course, but there is not outside of our doors, there are no investors lining up at the moment, right? And this probably is more due to fact of lack of awareness globally. And what we are doing right now, of course, the visits are limited. So it's more like Zoom calls at the moment, but we are also very active in terms of marketing, and we have contacted many international publishing companies, many magazines, and so on, and web platforms for sure. So we are trying to get out the word as much as possible. Of course, existing investors help a lot because word of mouth is one of the strongest instruments that we have. So it's kind of we are hoping to achieve like a snowball effect. We are starting small, but if we can keep this good momentum going, then it's gonna become much larger. And we did a quite good campaign with Bloomberg, for example, in 2019. We did a piece with Site Selection magazine. I know that very recently, a few days ago, there was article about Georgia on FIABCI's official webpage. So we are trying to use this pandemic to concentrate on marketing. And of course, we are always try to arrange B2G meetings with potential investors, so that's never gonna go away. One thing that has hurt us a little bit is lack of travel, because especially probably in real estate, if investors cannot come and visit the site in person, the decision is not gonna be made. So hopefully starting from like second half of this year, we are gonna see a big pickup in terms of investments. But even during COVID, I mean, we had several projects that have been started. And it's very interesting what kind of effect the COVID has had, because the biggest project in real estate that we supported was actually in green tourism, and they have a great site in eastern part of Georgia, which will be like kind of a mixed concept of hotels and villas, and it will be carbon neutral, as it was mentioned already, and it will be in line with all the regulations of preventing and complying with the current restrictions. So it will be quite a resilient project going forward, and we see the trend coming up. We have inquiries of similar projects, so we think this will help. The fact that we have many greenery in Georgia, you know that 70% of Georgia is covered by greenery. This is an advantage in the current situation. So we are hoping, and we are confident, and going forward we are going to have better results.
Thank you.
David, thank you so much for your answer. I will catch the opportunity and ask one question which we got from our participant. Can panelists advise on online resources providing information on property law, property investment, especially for non-citizen buyers and investors? Could we advise our participants on this regard?
Is it basically addressed to Georgian real estate, I guess?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I can take over this this question then. Thank you for the question, first of all, but it is really important to hear and understand what kind of legislations and what kind of tax system and what kind of procedures there are basically in order to acquire a real estate and the property in Georgia. First of all, I would like to admit and I would like to raise the question of the investment-friendly legislation system that Georgia has, and Mr. Davit has also mentioned in his presentation about these issues. It is worth mentioning that to start with the property taxes, we have no property tax. It is maximum 1%, but if it exceeds some amount of income generated from this property, but if this property does not generate anything, there's the property tax is 0%. There's no tax on capital gain. Within 2 years, if you sell, after 2 years, once you acquire a property, if you sell it after 2 years, you don't pay. You're not eligible to pay the tax. There's also a rental income tax. For instance, you're paying only 5% from the rental income once you acquire the property and once you rent it out. So the tax and taxation system in Georgia is very flexible, and as you can see, it's very low tax rates we have. Also, it's extremely easy to register your real estate in Georgia. For instance, if you are living in foreign countries, if you are not in Georgia personally, it is really easy to register your real estate with some video conference calls. You need a person who you trust, first of all, who will be located in Georgia. You will give them power of attorney, and it will cost you only around $100 if you want to register your property in only 1 day. These are mainly done because from the government, because to make it much easier for the foreign investors to acquire or invest, to acquire any real estate and invest in Georgia, or they can also very easily open their bank account and set up a company in Georgia, which is also done in only 1 day. So the legislation is really created in favor of the investors, so you're more than welcome.
Temur, thank you so much for giving detailed information. We'll ask our participants to leave their contact information, and we can guide them in future on such questions. Maybe other participants or speakers have questions to each other.
So just quickly, Temur, as an extension to what you said, is there a website somewhere where we could read up on, just a general information portal on?
It is general information, and if you are interested in it, I can share this information after this Zoom call is finished.
Okay,
yes, sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
I would like to add something, if I may. It was mentioned that going forward, the digital will be most important thing, and blockchain was also mentioned. And I would like to proudly say that Georgia was first country to use blockchain for property registration. So we are aware of the future trends, and the government is doing their best to be ahead of the curve on that regard. So thank you. And also I would encourage—
Thank you for highlighting.
Yeah. And I would encourage everyone to visit our website, investingeorgia.org, where you can find up-to-date information about the country and its investment potential, and also the legislation and so on. So, thank you.
Thank you a lot for highlighting this important topic. If speakers don't have any questions for now, you are welcome to write us an email, and for future we can guide you. We would like to thank you for participation, for your expertise, for your insights. I'm personally very optimistic that we will have opportunity to open soon, rebound soon, and organize some gathering event to share the expert opinions. We would like to invite you to Georgia, since seeing with your eyes will make you a believer that Georgia is truly the right place, and it's because of its traditions, because of its kitchen. So everything in synergy creates creates Georgia is amazing and attractive place to live and to education. Kate, maybe you will say some final words.
Thank you everyone. I also feel optimistic. At least I want to feel optimistic, as Lika said. Thank you everyone for your global insights, which is important for us to have more international feedback, which we could share in Georgia. And when everything is better and we are free to travel, we all welcome you to Georgia. Here we have everything that you can enjoy. We have ski resorts, winter ski resorts, wine resorts. So if you don't buy property, at least you have a wonderful journey here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.